Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we have a returning guest back on my show, which I'm excited for because we are going to be talking about aggression and power. We have to think about that. And if you have not checked out our previous episode, we talked about violence. So this channel just works along the same avenue so that we can really think about this in a more in-depth type of way. So thank you so much, Trent, for coming on my show. How are you?
I am happy to be back. I always enjoy the time I'm on here, and I even rewatched our episode a while ago. I was like, man, this was great fun. So happy to be here. And this is another kind of extension of my wheelhouse of topics that I love to just explore.
Yeah, why not? I mean, how could you not dive into power and aggression when you already did so much research into violence? You know what I mean? And it,
Yeah.
it really does tie in together because to have violence, you got to have some sort of aggression. You know what I mean? So
hmm
when you think of aggression, what does that make you think about?
So I think of two different variations of aggression. There's kind of the stereotype of aggression, and then there is the real life aggression that we can see from the day to day. The stereotype of aggression is generally thought of as a very male activity. It's a lot of shouting and, veins popping out of foreheads. And, what do you think about when people are like cheering for their favorite sports team or whatever? I think that's aggression.
Yeah.
But on the opposite side of it, you have the reality, where if we look at someone like MMA fighters, and when they're coming into the ring, they're not shouting, well, at least the good ones aren't shouting and making this giant
See,
spectacle of
yeah.
what they're doing. And then the moment the bell rings, it's just two dudes going at it, and they are completely focused on winning that match, winning that round. And that has to have a super large amount of aggression, especially with some of the more oddly niche versions of MMA. I have seen one variation, I believe, is out of Russia, where they are literally fighting in a phone booth. There is no movement. They have maybe 4 feet of what they're stuck in, and it's just guys wailing on each other continually. I'm just like,
Wow.
that is one, some skill to fight in such an enclosed space, and two, to have the cojones to go in there and be like, all right, I'm going to be within four. There is no moving around. I have no
Yeah.
space. It's just who can get the knockout punch first.
I couldn't imagine that. I mean, I think it would be entertaining to just kind of like walk past and be like, are they fighting in a very small contained area? This is what we're doing now. But it's interesting because you talk about MMA, and then I'm a type of person, I got into wrestling.
Mhm.
So I am into wrestling, and it's interesting to see how they're trying to transition and trying to bring this in. And it's people say it's so scripted that it's hard to bring in. I mean, in your opinion, is that true? Because
I
MMA
view
is just in the moment. It's
MMA is
just
in the
to the
moment.
point, you know?
Yeah.
Versus wrestling, it's like you kind of have to prepare for the moves, prepare for the slams, you know what I mean? Prepare
Yeah.
for everything's low key rehearsed. So I feel like there's still some type of aggression when there is wrestling because you can't fake those pains. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I kind of see it too. Like you can't fake it, and you have to have some type of aggression when you're an actor
Yeah.
because you have to bring that out. Like that's why when I see some of these people and they're wrestling, I'm just like, goodness, like you are a bad talker. You have no charisma. And it's just like, oh, no, no deal. But anyway, sorry, we got off topic. Sorry
No, no, it actually
about
goes
that
into
rant.
something else because I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is
Oh,
wrestling, but a little bit more MMA style.
yeah.
And part of that requires you to focus on the problem and figure out how to counter somebody's actions and other things. And it's this give and take that aggression does play a part into, but it has to be controlled.
Yes.
In order to be able to focus on something, you have to bring a certain level of activity. And I think
Hmm.
aggression is a good stand-in for when we say not force of action, but the words escape me right now. No. So when we are doing something, we have to
Uh-huh.
bring a certain level of energy to do it. And if we bring little energy, we're not going to succeed, especially if it's something that demands a much higher level of skill than we're used to. So if we come in with an aggression, a direct push of energy from ourselves, we're able to maybe overcome some of our shortcomings, and we'll certainly overcome people who bring up a lower level of energy when they're coming up against us. I can't count the number of times I've been playing games with my friends and we're acting aggressively in the game. Everyone else isn't, and we're carrying the match, we're carrying the victory, and it's just 2 to 3 guys who are just like, all right, we're going to be doing this at this time right now, and we're going to decide to be where the enemy is, where our opponents are, and making sure that they don't really matter in the grand scheme of this match. And it's
Mhm.
such an aspect that feels really good to do, and it's very rewarding and fulfilling to do that. But then I step out of my comfort zone of games and hanging out with my friends, and I look at the rest of the world. I'm like, where's your energy? Where's your caring about anything? Because if you're doing something aggressively, you're generally going to be caring about it. There's something on the
Yeah.
line, whether that's personal pride, ambition, or like you just love it to death.
Mhm.
And then I
Yeah.
see some other people and they're like, it's so paper thin about everything. I'm just like, what life are you living? Like somebody might be all up in their own you know what about something that somebody might think is stupid, like, oh, I absolutely love coffee. I have to have something about Starbucks, or maybe it's Taylor Swift, or maybe it's a sport, and other people don't get it, but they get it and they just lock in, and then you can watch them, especially if they're good at it, do the thing that they're good at really well, and it's like they were made for it, and it's so satisfying to watch. They have to have that aggression in order to be able to do that. So when people just kind of go like, it doesn't really matter, nothing really matters, I'm like, something does. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're here for nothing and you're just puttering around life waiting to die. That's not a place I want to be in personally. I at least if you tell me that you're still obsessed with the 1990s Beanie Babies collection and you're just slowly but surely working your way through all of them to add to the collection, like, all right, fine. I don't get it, but I kind of get it because you
Yeah.
have something that motivates you to do something else, which has second order of effects, or maybe you need more money. So maybe you pick up a better job. Maybe you do this thing. Maybe you do that thing. And it all leads back to supporting your hobbies, supporting your passions, and supporting even yourself to make sure that you can survive long enough to achieve that goal.
Yeah. I like that. I like the way that you explained it because you brought in a different perspective into aggression and how it can motivate us if it's in the right context, and if it's controlled. Because if you have aggression that's reckless and wild, it's dangerous. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's dangerous and it's unpredictable. And when something is unpredictable and dangerous, it's extremely dangerous.
yeah.
So warning, warning, red lights. So you talked about it in a controlled sense and thinking about it and like just focusing on your passions or just focusing on when you're motivated and just focusing how you're willing to just go out of your way to protect somebody or do something or just take charge. That initiative does take some form of aggression. That right there, that
Yeah.
cojones, but it's funny when you were also talking about how you can't live life as if like, oh, I have no motivation because the first thing I thought of is dodgeball when they were training the guys and one of the guys with the goggles was like, I just can't get mad. I can't get mad. And then the coach just kept on doing everything to get him so pissed off just so he could perform. And once he finally got that aggression out, and he did what he had to do, they ended up winning. So I know that's a side note, but yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. So I think that's interesting. But I guess it leads me up to my next question because sometimes people don't realize that they have power. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So, in your opinion, how can someone understand that they already have it within them?
That is a very complex question, despite the fact that it's very simple. Well, simply
Yeah.
asked. One aspect that I find helps me remind me that I have powers that we all have the choice to say no.
Yeah.
Like the power dynamics always start with the ability to say no. So a lot of people, especially online, when they're complaining about what work they're doing, what's something that they're not super happy about, is they seem to assume that they have to say yes.
Mhm.
And because of my freelance work and other things, when I go to somebody and I pitch my services or whatever it is, I really, really want them to say no or yes. I would rather them say no than maybe. I'd rather have them say yes than no. It's clear, it's direct, it has nothing to do with the whole song and dance of how I don't want to hurt these person's feelings. Like, listen, I respect you enough to say that I'm not going to waste your time and say no, I'm not interested in any of your services. I will put you on a list of things. If I come up against something that you can help me with or I think is going to be good for you, I will refer people your way. But no, I'm just not here for your social, I don't know, whatever it is, your pickup artist things. I don't need any help with that. I don't
Yeah.
find that interesting. I'm just going to say no. And you can move on. You don't have to keep sending me uh, messages and emails 6 or so weeks in a row being like, hey, have you changed your mind? Yes. Like, no, I told you no the
Yeah.
first time. And I'd said so clearly so that I don't have to be like really, really mean. And people
Yeah.
think that saying no is mean, but it's actually sometimes the better option
Yeah, true.
than, you know, making this thing go longer than it should. And the other aspects of power, the part that I want to talk about, the soft aspects of power, is that people think of power the same way as they think of aggression. It has to be loud and in your face and
Yeah.
all over the stuff. But if you look at people who actually do have power, they aren't very loud. Well, they can be loud when they're like speaking to people, but when you can, for lack of a better term, manipulate or move people around without this huge show of force, that is the true indication of power. I don't have to do it. I can get somebody else to do it. I don't have to do it in a mean way. I just request something of them and they'll do it because when they want to do it, or two, they are motivated to do it, or three, it's their job. So
Mhm.
it's an aspect of control and power in your life to be able to say, listen, I don't know how to fix X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to go to this person who does.
Mhm.
Hey, here's money, fix it. And then I let them do their magic, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then when people come to me, because I treat other people that way, I expect them to kind of treat me the same way. Hey, I have a problem. Here's money, fix it. Or here's how I want it fixed, or here's what I kind of want at the end of the thing. And there's a back and forth, and there's an understanding, at least on my
Mhm.
end, that I'm a business owner, you're a business owner, you have something that needs to be taken care of.
Mhm.
And you know what? Let's give each other some of that respect and hand off either some power for whatever it is so that you entrust me to take care of this. I'm bringing my expertise. I'm bringing whatever it is that makes me good in my industry to this job to take care of it, and it'll be handled. And if you don't like some of it, we'll work it out unless it's something that goes against my experience. That's not going to be a good choice of action.
Mm.
And on the other side, I expect them to pay me, communicate, and respect me to a certain degree, because there's been some job postings that I've looked at. It's like, I'm not even going to apply to this because it sounds like they're already shouting at me and like browbeating me the moment I get in there. It's like, listen, if I walk into a room and somebody immediately starts shouting at me, I'm just going to leave. Because if that's
Yeah.
the energy that you're bringing to this job, I don't want to be there. I like the calm, cool professionals. Yes,
Yeah.
they bring the aggression, they bring the power, they bring all these things because they are experienced. They know how this game is played. They know how the world kind of works, or at least the world that they're working in. Because I maintain the idea that there are multiple different worlds within all the different niches and all the different jobs that can be done, that there are just certain norms that people in there take for granted. And then when people come in from the outside, it's like, I have no idea what's going on. Why did you do this that way? And people are so used to that methodology that they're like, oh, I just did it without thinking. I actually experienced
Yeah.
this when I was trying life insurance in 2020. I was being trained by the leader of the office, and he's like, "Oh
Mhm.
yeah, we just do this, this, and this." And like, I had never used this software at all. I've never done this job before, and he had used it probably for about 20 years up until this point. And so it was just second nature to him. Like, I didn't even know that you had to scroll down on the screen to hit the button he was talking about. It's like, there's no button here, man. Just click the
Yeah.
button. What button? There's no button. It's like, oh no, yeah, that's really great. We can figure that out too. And I brought a couple of things in and how to do video conferencing on there because they were just starting to transition into more remote work because of all the stuff with COVID going on.
Yeah.
And I had been doing video conferencing for years before that. And it's like, well, you can share your screen and you can have stuff up and you don't have to see that particular side of the screen. So you can have your little whatever stuff you have for your cheat sheet on the side, and they won't be able to
Yeah.
notice, especially if it's on the screen that you're looking at, that you're reading while you're doing
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I like the way that you bring in, obviously, you always bring in those double perspective because there's always there's always more than one way to look at things, and it's hyped up by the media that the screaming, the testosterone, the vein pumping, the bleeding out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The cursing, the anger, the fear to have onto people is what power is. And I also liked how you also talked about certain norms in certain societies, in certain cultures, certain worlds, and certain just environments, how there are different norms. So that's the reason why I say that common sense isn't common for everyone because everyone's common sense is different. You know what I mean? We all have different norms that we are subjected to and we abide by to be accepted in our little environment. And even if it's at work, even if it's at school, it could be just going volunteering, whatever you have to do, you have to conform your normal self in some way, shape, or form. And people forget about that. It's that simple power that's always in action, that's always in play that people just bypass in their mind and they just dilute it to be something else so that they don't feel powerless. But only if they remember, just like you said, you have the power because you can say no. And the fear of saying no and being rejected by that no is people's biggest problem, apparently, because they just want everybody to like them. I mean, I've gotten to the point where if I find out that people don't like me, I'm relieved. You know what I mean? I'm absolutely relieved. Why? Because you're one less person I can care less about. Yeah, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? You come and go with the wind as I see you, But if you're a person that like me and we connect and we're cool, then honey, you're on my good side, and I'm always gonna appreciate the connection that we had. And those are what matter to me most. And I feel like having that power is to know who's real and who's not and who's sincere is I think is such a beautiful gift that people forget that they have. And once they tap into it, it's realized, no, you have so much that you can just walk into the room and just radiate it because the people know that you have boundaries set up. People know that you already know how to say no. And that's the reason why people respect CEOs. That's why the people respect, these high people in position and because they have the power to say no because people they think like peasant people or poor people always have to say yes because they're always with their hands out, but that's not always the case. You know what I mean? In my opinion, that's not always the case. But
I would
I don't
agree.
know.
I think it comes down to getting away from some societal roots, at least in the United States,
Yeah.
because the U.S. I maintain is a martial nation. We were born out of fighting. We were born in opposition to people trying to put rules over us that we did not agree to, and we're not necessarily the best with our best interest at heart. And from about 1960 onward, we started to see the eroding of that natural tendency toward Americans being loud, violent, and forceful in what they care about, to what we have now, which is I would say it's roughly an even split between people who are the traditional American style to a newer, softer American style. That doesn't mean that everything that they do is bad. It's just that you have to balance these two positions out. It's like, listen, I don't want to get into a foreign fight. I don't want to get into fights at all, but I have to be able to take care of fights when I encounter them instead of avoiding fights and conflict entirely. Within some
Exactly.
of my religious circles, there seems to be a mentality that any and all conflict is wrong. It's like, well, that's not the case because even within religion, there is the juxtaposition of good versus evil,
Yeah.
or right versus wrong, benefit versus deficit, chaos versus order. All these things are set in a way that there is conflict between them. And this kind of goes back to where we talk about violence in our early
Yeah.
things, that there has to be something that keeps things interesting, that there has to be some sort of struggle in order for life to grow. And I think that we're setting it up so that there is no struggle, there is no uh, hard path to take in the modern world, so that our natural biology, which is designed to, fight saber-toothed tigers and survive and find the berries and make sure that we make it to tomorrow and all these other things, is like, I'm made for something else and I don't know what's going on, and I'm starting to wig out and I need something. So we start
Yeah.
incorporating things that don't necessarily need to be conflicts, because our body's saying we need a conflict, otherwise we are not alive. So we have to find something that's going to be benefiting us that feels like conflict. That's why I think things like sports and wrestling and all the other stuff, the competitions, are what,
Yeah.
especially what men like to do, because that feeds into that survival instinct of we have to strive for something.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that people think that striving for something also is viewed as a negative thing, because you're striving, you're fighting with something. Why is that? Why do you have to do that? It's like, well, because I want to achieve something. I want to feel accomplished. I want to actually accomplish something and
Yeah.
not just feel accomplished. And that to me goes back into our loop again of aggression. I want to live life aggressively. I want to, like in the last few years, particularly like the last 6 months, I wanted to have more beauty in my life. And I think that things like beauty and love should have some aggression in them as well. I hate
Yeah.
the stereotype that was pushed on the American populace on TV of the suburban husband hates his wife, and so does his wife hates her
Yeah.
husband. It's like, oh, why would you? All right, I'm going to get into a relationship that is like 20, 30 years minimum if we live really nicely. And I'm going to not like the other person I'm going to be hanging out with. Why do I want that?
Yeah.
I want the whole Gomez Adams, Morticia Adams kind of vibe. They're super weird, but you don't think that they don't care about each other. And
Exactly.
I'm starting to see resurgence of people's like, yeah, I want to care about my spouse. Great,
Yeah.
cool. That's amazing. But we still have 20, 30 decades to unwind from the quote joke of spousal dislike. And it's like, why? Why do
Yeah.
I want to waste my time with something that does not have the push behind it? It's like, oh man, I really care about this person. Oh, this
Exactly.
person's okay. I guess we'll just kind of, see where it goes. No, 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 no. We're
No.
gonna put that over there. We're gonna bring some aggression into this. Be like, yeah,
Exactly.
no, that one's mine. No touch.
Exactly. No touchy. Do not touch that over. Don't even look at it. Just walk away. Walk away nicely. Thank you so much. I absolutely agree. I think when you have, goes back to the passion that we were talking about earlier. When you have that passion, when you have that aggression, when you have that drive, it it makes life worthwhile because why wouldn't you want something good for you? Why wouldn't you want something good for someone else? Why wouldn't you want to have a good and healthy relationship and love each other and flirt and joke and just be silly without having any type of judgment, And I absolutely agree. I hate that concept of how it's such it's okay to joke about somebody about your spouse being bad or your spouse being a nagger or an overspender as if that's okay. But it's like that sounds unhealthy. You know what I mean? That sounds a little toxic. That sounds
I
like red
go.
flags flagging flying everywhere.
I don't even like when people joke about their spouse being dumb or something like that. Like that's like, can somebody be ditzy? Oh yeah, that's just a personality thing. It's like, but they're not dumb. It's just that
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of ADHD
Yeah.
and active. That's not something wrong, but it feels like, oh, they're just being dumb. And it's like, I want to smack a fool, because it's like that's your person over there. Don't degrade your person. I don't like it when I see people who are married or in a committed relationship like degrade their person even moderately in front of other people. Because if they can
Oh,
do that in front of other people, they're probably doing a lot worse behind the scenes. It's like, listen, I'm getting emotionally, physically, financially, and all sorts of other invested in this thing. I don't want to damage that. I don't want to undermine it. That happens with lying and my behavior. So I want to make sure that I come correct with my aggression and all the other stuff, that I am here. There's no question about it, that I'm full in on this thing. I don't want to feel like I'm being forced to sign on the dotted line or whatever.
Right.
And I want the same kind of energy back. So I don't go in for a lot of stuff. Like I'm looking at dating profiles recently. It's just like, man, no one's putting in any effort into any of these things. Like sometimes they don't even have bios. Some of the bios are just terrible. And it's like, okay, we want to meet on an equal footing and find out from there. Some of them come in like the one I hate the most is I'm funnier than you. It's like, first of all, we've never met. We have no idea which one of us is
People do
funnier.
that. Do people
Yeah,
have that as a bio? I mean,
I have
ladies and
seen
gentlemen, do not do that. Do not do that. That's a weird flag. That's just saying the weird
yeah,
flag. That's a weird one.
the weirdest flag one of the weirdest flags I've seen. I have seen 3 to 4 different profiles use the I'm funnier than you line. I'm just like, you sound insufferable.
Is that part
Because
of something? I mean, it has to be part of something. It has to be like maybe an inside joke or from a specific show or something for them to want to think that that's okay. Because one, you don't know if someone's funnier than you. You don't know, and there's half the time you're not that funny when you say that you're fun. You're a funny person. Half the
yeah,
time you're corny and sometimes a little weird and maybe a dark humor that a particular person may only like and understand. Then yes, you're funnier. But other than that, you're
yeah.
kind of that's a hard thing to find.
I have a sneaking suspicion that it was probably given on a blog post somewhere for advice on how to write dating profiles. Because I've looked at a few of them and just like some of these are
So
terrible.
some of these people need to stop giving advice. You know what I mean? I think that's one thing that
Yeah,
gets me upset and gets my water boiling, if that's how you say it.
yeah.
But I just feel like some people should not be giving advice. Like who said to do that? Why can't? But that's the thing. What I realized is that back then people were forced to be married. People were forced to be married in so many reasons by having a child early or just going out of the race and getting and falling in love, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
doing things, you know what I mean? There's so many predicaments that made people be forced in unity that cause them to hate one another and ripple effect. And that's the reason why adultery is accepted and people are now bringing thousands of people into their bedrooms. And you know what I mean? It's just it's gotten messy. You know what I mean? Dating is messy, relationships are now messier, and it's hard. It's hard out there. It's hard out there to be in the dating scene because you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. I've heard people gotten
Sometimes,
scammed. Like, really? You out dating and then you're gonna just rob the guy twice?
oh my
Like,
goodness. The worst part is when you know exactly what you're getting into. I've encountered like 4 different profiles in like a month where it's like we're in an open relationship and everyone knows what's going on. I'm just like, I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna leave. This is not my scene. You have fun with that. Not my scene. I'm just not here
mm,
for it. And
no.
an interesting thing, back in the day, I actually knew a couple who had an arranged marriage. Their families came together. It's like, hey, we'll pair these two up. They're happy as clams. They're having a great time. One of their sisters, or one of the sisters of the spouses, said, I love an arranged marriage. It's like, okay, that works for some people, doesn't work
See,
for
it works.
others.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you are okay with it, then great. But if it's like forced when like you know that somebody like for instance, it happens when like they get met in high school and then they get knocked up in prom and then their
Yeah,
parents are like, oh, we gotta, you guys are gonna have to buckle down for the child and get married. I mean, we've seen it over and over. I mean, come on, they made 16 and pregnant on MTV, and it's still running. Goodness, it's still running. So it just makes it real how like sometimes it's just forced through generations. But
the
okay, so
there's biblical concepts of people getting married because somebody's having a child. And this was viewed to help keep society together. And to an extent, yes, families will keep society together. There has to be the understanding that there is a risk in behavior. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which was the aggression and all the other stuff. There has to be a consequence. There's something about our biology that requires consequences to be recognized. But we're creating a society where there is no consequence, and we're having all these consequences suddenly because no one's thinking about these consequences. It's like,
yeah.
oh man, when we had certain values and things like, hey, don't do stupid stuff because bad things will happen. So no,
Yeah.
no, all that stuff is just outdated and backwards. It's not really stupid stuff. Starts doing stupid stuff, bad things start to happen. This cause and effect seems surprising to me. I could never have seen this coming. Heavy sarcasm implied.
Exactly. I took that sarcasm. I understood it. Goodness, the time is running up and I'm so sad. We're gonna have to figure out another topic to bring you back on the show because this has been such a delight speaking to you about power and aggression. Such a delight. So anyone in the audience is listening that wants to know more about Trent or just want to check out the first topic that we talked about violence, please check it out. It's on my website, and you can find his websites and everything that he has to offer because he has a lot of good information, a lot of great blogs, a lot of great points and perspectives that he shares with the world. And if you already like his perspective, then go check it out because you're not going to be disappointed. So, with that being said, always, always, always be thinking, y'all. Bye.